Welcome to the Extreme Underground, the show where I take a look at some of the most disturbing and controversial films in the world of cinema. Today we'll be talking about 29 Needles from Unearthed Films. Written and directed by Scott Philip Gorgons, 29 Needles is the fourth entry into the new series from Unearthed Films called Too Extreme for Mainstream. This movie's about Francis, who's addicted to pain. The official synopsis suggests this is to control his inner demons, but it definitely just seems like a sex thing. I didn't really enjoy this movie whatsoever, but we will break it down. I'm probably going to graze over a lot of stuff because this movie takes its time doing absolutely everything. I know that I'm in the minority when talking about this because every review that I've seen, anyone that I've seen talking about this movie praises it, gives it 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, and I have no idea how. So I'm gonna make this fairly quick. This movie starts off with a guy jerking off while he's standing over top of Francis. This main guy we see throughout the course of the film, he regurgitates a little bit of a chain and eventually he's chained up. This must be the literal inner demons that are talked about in the official synopsis. After the titles, we see two girls at a brothel that call up Francis and say, hey, come on over if you want to have some fun. He hops on his motorcycle, heads over, gets on all fours, gets pegged, and then he's whipped, and as he's feeling the pain, we get flashes of this guy who's chained, those demons that we know of. He pulls out a knife and the girls are like, no, we're not into that kind of shit. Get the hell out. It's worth noting this whole movie is extremely slow and felt like a David Dakota movie. If you've seen his films, they all have a very similar feeling. There's no depth to any shot. Everything is just wide open, fairly bright, and there's an abnormal amount of cross dissolves to signify time passing. This is 5 minutes into the movie and I've already made a note of how obnoxious it already is. When things aren't extremely overlit, they're underlit, and there's just so much grain in everything. And usually in extreme cinema, we're forgiving of these kind of technical issues because it comes with the territory. But this is one of those films that's not found footage. It's not supposed to be grotesque in that kind of way. It's just mostly poorly done from a technical aspect. And the acting is evidently bad.
The place I was referring to is less organized.
And I'll get into this as we continue through because there are some scenes that just drag. Anyway, we get some hypnotic scene where Francis is dreaming of the chained guy in an executioner mask giving birth. I don't know what this signifies, and that's okay. I'm sure this movie is gonna mean a lot to a lot of different people, but because I was not invested, I wasn't really looking for those answers because I didn't care. And I know this is a really negative review and not the normal kind of breakdown that I usually give, but it's important to call out all of these specific scenes that I didn't like and try to explain why I didn't like them. The next scene is probably one of the more interesting scenes where Francis hangs out under a bridge and eventually goes home. He sits in a chair, he seems bored as hell, and he sticks a needle in his balls as a naked couple come from the trees wearing animal paper mache masks. Again, I don't know what this symbolizes, but they do show up multiple times throughout the film. Francis goes to a bar, nothing really happens. He goes back home, looks out the window, then goes back to a bar. A guy comes over to him and says, hey, I know what you like. You want to get out of here? They go back to his place. The guy sucks him off, and Francis asks him to bite him, so he bites a piece of his dick, and then he forcibly bangs him and leaves. We see more shots of Francis in his chair, then at the waterfall. He eventually goes to a different bar.
I've actually seen you around town and other places as well.
And then a guy sits down with him, and we have the most boring scene that I've ever seen in any film. It's one shot of two people talking for 10 minutes. He knows a place where he can do crazier fetish stuff, and instead of doing close-ups on the different people as they're talking with reaction shots, it's literally just a wide shot and they're just talking, and it's boring as fuck. It's honestly such a waste of time and why editing even exists in the first place, so you don't have to see these full conversations. Even YouTubers like me understand this fundamental issue. If somebody's on screen talking a lot, you either need to cut to B-roll, maybe that's a shot of you playing with your glass, maybe it's a cut-in shot of a reaction, or even how I use them. If I were to stand here showing no B-roll, not doing any zoom-ins or punch-ins, it would be boring as fuck. The reason why I zoom to my head is because if I have one stream of thought, but I don't want to cover it with B-roll, I zoom in. If these guys are having a conversation, they know what they're doing. This guy's saying information, this guy's saying information, so zoom to their heads and fix it. You can do it in post, even if it's bad quality. I shoot in 4K, so when I zoom in, it's still 1080p. It doesn't matter if this guy had a 4K camera or not, it would be more acceptable than one wide shot for 10 minutes. All right, back to the movie. Francis goes to a waterfall, he has a smoke, he puts it out in his arm. There's a shot of a dead bird for no reason. He goes back to a bar, then he goes into the car, and at this point, I paused it to see what time it was. Literally nothing has really happened. We know this guy likes sex, we know he likes pain. Nothing interesting, nothing disturbing, nothing extreme has happened, and we still have an hour to go. These two guys finally hook up, they go to the No Boundaries sex club, and this guy is still struggling to get through his lines.
Like I said, the others you can have free-for-all on them. Some will have more men, some with more women.
He just keeps talking and talking and talking. We get glimpses of what's actually happening here. We've got rooms with different sex things. There's a guy in a luchador mask that cuts himself, and Francis starts to lick the blood. It shows him blowing the guy as the guy in the mask cuts his back, and then he sucks the pus out of his eye with a tube. This is probably the most disturbing thing in this whole movie, just because it's weird, but it's not really graphic. It is worth noting that all of the sex that happens seems to be legitimate sex. Like, once again, we've got the two guys, but now instead of the bar, they're sitting in the car, and they're talking, one shot, no cuts, just boring. Francis goes to a cafe.
Better never be either of us.
Cuts to him swimming and licking a tube that's on the guy's leg. Then we go back to the club where there's more random fetish scenes, and I feel like this is where they're trying to be edgy or extreme or disturbing, but it really doesn't matter. There's some water sports, there's some gay sex, and he goes back home for a shower, and the random paper mache head animal things fade in and out as they come closer to him. And then we see the only big like practical effect in the film, which is this big slug thing, which seemed to be what most people talked about in the behind the scenes, which plays next to no part in this film. Like, you see it a little bit here, and then you see it in a bit when he rolls around on the ground and like bangs it. I'm honestly looking at these notes and it's all the same. It's like he goes home, he sits in his chair, he does nothing. He hangs out by some electrical towers. He goes back to the club. He harasses the girl that he met at the beginning with no consequences. He's fisted and then fingers come out of his ass. He goes to a bar, he beats a guy up, he brings him home, and the random masked people take the body. He goes to that guy's house, they hold each other's hands, and they kill each other with knives. He goes to that inner demon that had chains on him that's now unleashed, and he gives him a crown of thorns. Honestly, I'm just so frustrated with this movie. The fact that I'm even talking about this and spending time editing it is aggravating because it was such a boring movie. I know this is gonna come off harsh, especially to the creator, and I apologize, and I'm happy for him that a lot of people are praising this movie. Unfortunately, I'm just the other side of the coin on this one, but I didn't find anything redeeming about this movie. It's boring, it's not well shot, it's not well edited. The editing is probably the biggest issue. If this was edited better, you could have just skipped entire scenes or edited them differently to make it not feel like it was as slow as it was. Sometimes movies can be slow if they're trying to build a certain atmosphere. This one didn't really have that. I'm sure there are people that will find meanings for everything. The slug, the animal heads, the crown of thorns, and maybe it is so blatant to most of the people watching this video. It was lost on me because I was so disinterested half an hour into this movie. And a common thread that I'm seeing with the Too Extreme for Mainstream series from Unearthed Films, 3 of the movies hinge on gay sex being the disturbing aspect of the movies. So Torment, Deep Web, and this one all feature primarily the extreme element is actual gay sex. That's it. And so having a movie that specifically seems to hinge on people getting grossed out by a guy sounding in the corner or jerking off, like, yeah, sure, it's not going to be for everybody and I'm not getting aroused by it, but it's also not like disturbing me. Sure, I'm going to be like, oh fuck, sounding would hurt, but like, I'm not like, oh my god, this is the most disturbing movie I've ever seen, because these are just fetishes. I'm getting a little rambly. I'm just not interested. It's boring to me. So unless House of the Flesh Mannequins, the last film in this series that I have yet to see, unless that is so insanely good, I can't see me sticking with this Too Extreme for Mainstream stuff. I think I just prefer a better narrative. So I'm gonna give this 0.5 giant slugs out of 5. As always, thank you for watching. Like this video and comment below with your thoughts on the film if you've seen it. If you haven't and you do want to check it out, links are in the description. And if this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, stay up to date with everything here on the Extreme Underground.